And so I am a first generation college student. I grew up in a drug-induced household. And so if you have ever seen New Jack City, I lived that as a kid in the 80s. And so very early on, I excelled in education, but I knew it was going to be kind of like the only thing that was going to get me out the hood. I was in dance, I was in drama, and I was like, you just got to read.
We always hear about, the Americas and the United States and Christopher Columbus, discovered us. And it was like, in 1492, the Taínos found Columbus lost at sea, okay?
Yeah.
120 years before Harvard was even established for white farmers, because let's be honest, Harvard, they were created to give upward mobility for white farmers. But 100 and something years before that, there was a school that was created in a predominantly black country.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Know Your Rights podcast. It's your boy, Sean Tory. We're back in the place to be, and I have two phenomenal, exceptional women that are here to lay it down for the Know Your Rights Camp Detroit 2024, and I have no shame. We're going to make sure we do these introductions right, okay? So now, Miss Cyekeia Lee, okay, has an exceptional background in communication, counseling, and education from Eastern Michigan University and Wayne State University, respectfully, and currently leads the Detroit College Access Network. And then our fair queen that I got a chance to meet back in Vegas in 2022, Miss Mariela Regalado, okay, who hails from Brooklyn and a Dominican immigrant, developed her zeal for college counseling at St. John's University, drawing from her own experiences as the first in her family to navigate education. We have here the exceptional, phenomenal, radiant ladies, Miss Cyekeia Lee and Miss Mariela Regalado. What's going on, ladies? How y'all feeling? Come on.
Hey,
y'all
Sean.
Y'all like that introduction?
Loved it.
I tried.
Loved it.
I tried. No, but please, ladies, please tell the people what your educational journeys were.
Ooh.
Each individually.
Wow.
We're going to start there.
Okay, I'll give you the long story short.
Yeah, do that.
Right? Long story short. I think I'll start with my parents' expectations. A lot of times you hear like my parents are immigrants, or you hear like immigrant stories. And I think for me and my siblings, it was a little bit different because we're immigrants ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so we had this expectation of education being our legacy, but our parents didn't know how to help us get there, right? So for my father, once we graduated high school, he was like, great, you're done, right? Because for him, like my father doesn't know how to read or write. And being able to understand what that's like as a child, where you make like a Father's Day card and like your dad's like, thank you, but he doesn't know what it says, right? And then my mom, who I feel like was a feminist before like that was even language that she had. And she raised my siblings and I to be so independent. And she kept pushing us to go to college. But again, she wanted us to go, but didn't know how to help us do that. And so unfortunately, even though I did go to college, I didn't go to my best fit college. I had so many student loans. And while I was a college student, I was learning of all these different programs in New York City that I could have been a part of, but because I didn't know it, I wasn't a part of it. And I kept saying like, why nobody told me that?
Right.
Yeah.
It was always like a why, and I was so confused. Like, if this existed, how come no one told me? And that's really why I became a college counselor, because I felt like my journey could have been so different.
Right.
I was a good student, right? I had a good academic profile. I took the SAT. I was, in all these activities. And so for me, I felt like my journey should have been different, and it wasn't.
Got you.
And so, I went into that career making sure that my kids didn't make the mistakes that I had to make.
Okay, for sure.
Wow. I think, just hearing you, there are so many parallels in my story. And so I am a first generation college student. I grew up in a drug-induced household. And so if you have ever seen New Jack City, I lived that as a kid in the 80s. And so very early on, I excelled in education, but I knew it was going to be kind of like the only thing that was going to get me out the hood. I was in dance, I was in drama, and I was like, you just got to read. You mentioned your father not being able to read. My father cannot read and write either. So I know what it's like. You bring home a permission slip or something like that, and it's like, it's a no-go. My mother had went to community college but didn't finish, and I just knew, I was like, I have to go further. And so I went on a field trip in 7th grade to Eastern Michigan University. And to this day, I have the pencil that they passed out on the field trip,
You
because
still have the pencil?
I still have the pencil that they passed out on the field trip. I was like, I'm coming back. And with my 7th grade mind, I saw on this campus people that looked like me, people that didn't look like me. I saw some handsome men. I was like, oh, I'll be back. Like, don't have to worry, I'll be back.
They must have been
But-
alphas. What?
And I saw a food court. I saw the dorms. And for me, that was a lot of stability, right? And so then I went off to Eastern Michigan University, but I only applied to that one school because they gave me a pencil. And it was my first time on the campus. So like you, I think like, could I have applied to multiple institutions? But that was the only one that I saw. And so that just paralleled into me thinking about all the other little Cyekeias in the world. And so that's why I just had, post that journey, have been on a journey ever since to just help as many students as I can.
See, it's beautiful and it's beautiful in a sense, not just in a sense, but the fact that you all are first generation college students. I'm also a first gen.
Come on.
Ooh,
so to
first
be-
gen club.
First gen,
Everybody
you know what I'm
here,
saying? And
yes.
it's beautiful to sit up here and see how far we go, but then
Yes.
also understand in 2024, there's still a lot of firsts
Absolutely.
in
There is.
generation,
There
right?
is.
As far as for the
Unfortunately.
post-secondary, and that loops into what I'm thinking about for your presentation, which I'm looking forward to, because in the past, Mariela and myself, we always do them, right?
Okay.
And then to have you here, and it's great because I know about the Detroit's math system, and I know you guys do a timeline in your presentation, correct?
Yes.
For
Yes.
education. So talk about
Yeah.
this timeline of education. Let's go there. Let's go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do want to say, like, Sean, you know very well, we've always been like education speakers for
Always.
a couple of camps. And when this opportunity came along, I always say I'm not a gatekeeper. So
Thanks.
when this
Thank
opportunity
goodness.
came along and they said, hey, like, do you want to do the education speaker for this camp? And I said, I'll do it if I can add someone else to it. And I was so happy when I was able to connect with you because, you know, the camp is just one day, right?
Yeah.
And although I think that one day is full of so much goodness and so much learning, we want to make sure that all the kids have things to continue and to go back to. And I said, the only way this is going to work and it's going to be beneficial for our students is if we have a native in there. And just seeing what you have at like Decan and what the kids are going to be able to still do and the Graduate 313 centers, I think that's like the best part of our presentation.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
when we were putting it together, for us, it was important to start at the beginning. I think a lot of our students know the name brand schools.
Absolutely.
Right? What they see on TV, the Harvards and kind of the Ivy League and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we started with the timeline just for them to see this legacy of Black and brown students of education. That's not something that started now, right? We're talking hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I think because they know all the mainstream stuff, they don't know historically Black colleges, right? They don't know like what other schools, because other schools don't carry like the same brand recognition as like the Harvards and the Yales of the world.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the school isn't any good. And so we wanted to start with that because I always say, you know, the first university in the New World started in present day Dominican Republic, right?
I didn't know
small,
that.
right, a small island in the Caribbean that shares, you know, its borders with Haiti. And we always hear about, oh, the Americas and the United States and Christopher Columbus, like, you know, discovered us. And it was like, you know, well, in 1492, the Taínos found Columbus
Come
lost
on.
at sea,
Come on
okay?
now. Come on
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Talk
yeah.
And
man.
Yeah.
120 years before Harvard was even established for white farmers, because let's be honest,
Land grant
Harvard,
institutions and all
right,
that.
they were
Right.
created to give upward mobility for white farmers.
Yep.
But 100 and something years before that, there was a school that was created in a predominantly Black country, right? And then HBCUs were also created. And so for us, it was important for students to know the history, right? And that's really what we're doing here.
So that's what y'all doing. Okay. So
Yeah.
even in what you said about our youth still not knowing historical Black colleges. So what is your responsibility and duty to provide those resources, not just to HBCUs, but yes, so HBCUs, vocational schools, trade schools,
Absolutely. Yeah.
community colleges. What is the approach you have when it comes to providing those resources to the students?
Yeah, so you mentioned Harvard, and we're in the state of Michigan. And so for us, students only hear about the University of Michigan and Michigan State. So it's
That's the
either-
only one I knew coming into this.
I'm not gonna lie, I think being here, we saw another college like coming here.
And you didn't know.
We didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
no,
and that
because
might
that's
have
what
been
you
Wayne
think about.
State. But so, students learn, though, at least the University of Michigan's fight song in elementary. Not even knowing, like, you literally got to fight to get there. So at the Detroit College Access Network, what we do is we work with 58 high schools in the city of Detroit. And we expose students to everything that you mentioned. We expose them to 2-year institutions, 4-year institutions. If you want to go into wind turbine because you are not afraid of heights,
Right.
and you're going to make $150,000, then do that. Our responsibility is to expose them to all pathways. We do that with the college match tool that was designed to help Black and brown students find their best fit college, but only at institutions that graduate us at higher rates.
Gotcha.
If it's one that the data doesn't match, the percentage doesn't match, it may be on the list, but it's gonna be ranked lower, right? So we expose them to the college match tool, but we do a whole lot of college visits, and we're lucky in Detroit to have one HBCU.
And what is that HBCU, man?
That is Pensole
That's
College.
Pensole College, yes.
And it is just been revitalized. It wasn't here before, so it's newer.
Yes.
It was something else back in the day, and so
was.
it's now been revitalized. And we do essentially field trips there, and students can make their own shoe. It's one of our best field trips because students come out with like their own like design Air Force One, so they can think about. Yes, it's
I'm trying to go.
Let's go.
I ain't had me some Air Force Ones in a minute, but you know what I'm saying? Hold on,
Yeah, some of the top designers at Nike are coming out of those classes right here in the heart of the city. So,
Okay.
But back to the question, like we expose students to all of those things just so they know all of their pathways and all of their options.
Okay. So then that's perfect. So then with that, what is the actual name of the tool that you guys use, the match?
Yeah.
Like, because I want people to understand the actual name of the tool that you
Yeah,
guys
it's
use.
the college match tool. That's what it's called.
Sounds
It's the college match tool. And, I just want to echo, like, the Supreme Court last summer ruled that affirmative action couldn't be used in admissions anymore. And so we had our tool even before they made the decision. We were like, we already know that sometimes there are gatekeepers, right? And they don't want our students there. And so we had the tool created years ago just so students could find that best match.
Okay. So, man, we need that in our state.
Yes.
Yeah, people keep asking, is it
I think
everywhere?
everyone needs
No,
to
it's not.
have
It's
it.
not
Yes,
everywhere.
It's just
yes.
in Detroit.
And
that we
it's
know
so
of.
important because in the presentation, we also talk about reach, match, and like
and
safety
safety.
schools.
Yes.
Some people say like reach, target, and safety schools and things like that.
Absolutely.
Like there's always like different names to it, but the formula is the same.
Okay.
The same way how Cyekeia mentioned how she had only applied to one school. The goal is for all the students to apply to more than one school. I always tell students, apply to the city schools.
Absolutely.
Apply to community colleges. If, apply to the reach, right? I always say, like, the reach school is like when your GPA is literally reaching for it, right?
You almost
It's
there.
reaching. You're almost there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I love community colleges because you can start there and then go anywhere. So the goal is to give students that robust college list and get them looking at other schools.
That's beautiful. So what would you say as a piece of advice for the youth when they have this perception, like we talked about that from the beginning? We have this perception of what going to an Ivy League or going there. It's just like like when we talk to high school athletes, they think D1 is the only way. What do you say to those youth about, hey, go to a school that wants to invest in you? And there's a difference, right? We talk about that. Do you guys talk about how do we encourage our youth to go to a school that wants to invest in us?
Yeah, so we, I think that's why our campus visits are so important. Like, go to a school that wants to invest in you. Go to one that you see yourself at, because sometimes students get admitted. They've never even been to the place that they are admitted.
They want to go to.
Right.
Right.
Look to see the net price because so students will say, like, I get a Pell Grant. I'm like, okay, well, what else are you getting besides the Pell Grant? Because that alone is not going to get it. Luckily, in Detroit, we have the Detroit Promise. And so at our 2-year institutions, students from Detroit high schools can go for free. At our 4-year institutions, they can get tuition support, but they have to have a 3.0. But as a state, we have the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. So I lift all of those things up because for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, students only need to just graduate high school. You could have a 1.7, you could have a 3.2, you get that scholarship. So within the searches, I'm like, figure out where it will cost you and your family the least amount. You mentioned student loans. I had $160,000 worth of student loan debt. Now, luckily, through public service, I don't have that anymore. But sometimes our students are not going to go into public service,
they're not
right?
going to public service, yeah.
So I'm like, just make sure you know all of your options as you make those
That's
explorations.
what it is.
Yeah.
Man, ladies, that's the whole principle of what we're doing here for the Know Your Rights
Yeah.
Camp. And I want to thank you ladies so much for just being some exceptional, radiant, phenomenal
you
women
know.
on the education workshop. And just
Yeah,
thank y'all so
thank
much
you.
for joining us today.
Thank you.
Y'all got last plugs? Any last plugs for the people? Go on ahead. Drop your socials, drop everything. Last plugs.
I don't even know them by heart. Just go to DetroitCan.org.
go.
It's all there. Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm Sean Tory, one of your guest hosts, and we'll see you next time. But make sure you follow us on our social medias, Your Rights Camp on our social handles, and for our YouTube channel, Know Your Rights Camp. And if you want to learn more information about us, please go to our website, knowyourrightscamp.org, and make sure you drop a donation. We'll see you next time.